We're gonna go into the orange store to see what the lumber prices are today. What? You want how much for those? A 2x4 that used to cost $250 is now $737 or something. That's crazy. Mom and Dad, you were wrong. Money does grow on trees. It's not a YouTube video without some unnecessary drone footage, is it? I chose some nice, peppy music just because all this is kind of sad. Some of you are feeling like this. Some of you may be feeling like this. For those of you in the YouTube time capsule, this is April 26, 2021, and we're 13, 14 months in the pandemic, and lumber prices are crazy stupid. They're like 3 to 4 times what we're used to seeing, and there's a lot of people freaking out right now over the cost of lumber, and rightly so. For those of you watching in real time, I wanted to pass along some information that I learned this week as I researched like what's causing all of these price hikes and how long are they gonna stick around, and so I hope to distill all that information to you and give it to you in a short and entertaining, easy to digest format. But first I want to introduce you to my neighbor, my friend Micah, who was the first person to tell me about the cost of lumber, and I want to bring you here to a job site, a real world situation where someone's building a house and dealing with the price increase. I wanted you to hear kind of his story of how it hit him. Hey, this is Micah, my friend and neighbor who's building a house, and Micah's the first person to tell me about the price hike. I was shocked. Tell us like what you were quoted on a 2x6.
Well, it's pretty bad. We got quoted for one 2x6 by 22 foot Southern Yellow Pine stud. It was $68. And I needed 22 of them to wrap around the front of the house in the corner where we had a staircase going up. So instead of that, we said, what are the other options? And we came up with this, which is a laminated strand board. It's all engineered wood, super duper straight, super duper strong, structural, and we got this for less than half the cost.
That's crazy. Better to work with.
Better to work with.
Straighter.
Just much straighter.
You know, that may be a cool thing is with the price of traditional lumber going up, I wonder if people will be more creative and innovative with like things like this. I would have never thought to use that. You didn't?
Psyched I found it.
Yeah, pretty cool. Did you know, I was reading, I did not tell you this, so we'll get your reaction live. I read a report today that said the average house that's being constructed now, the cost has increased by $24,000 just because of lumber.
Yep. I believe it.
You believe it?
Well, I just went through it, and we paid. It was like playing the stock market. When we went in, I mean, you don't know which day you should buy the lumber, and every week they'll price it and reprice every single week based on the lumber's futures.
It's crazy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's real problem. You should probably drink a beer.
Or a shot.
So what are lumber prices right now? Well, I think you call it the futures. You can buy a board foot of lumber, right? That's kind of how they measure it. Pre-pandemic, they were around $200 to $300, sometimes up to $400, but from what I can tell, they were around $200 to $300 per board feet. I think last week they hit an all-time high around, I think 1,500. I've seen different reports anywhere, but they're over 1,000. You know, I've seen some that's like 1,050. I've seen 1,200. I've seen 1,500. I don't know if people are exaggerating, but the point is it's not 200 to 300. And the point is like this is like super crazy high, like multiple times more high. A construction friend of mine said, you know, he used to buy 2x4s down here in South Texas for $250, and now they're like $750. They're really expensive when you're used to paying $250. So why is this happening? Now again, I'm not going to go down into the granular details here. I just want to give you, like, if you're looking for a broad brush overview of like what are the major things kind of happening, that's what I'm going to try to do. I've just digested some of this stuff and I want to give it to you. You know, some of it may be off a little bit, but I'll link down to all the different articles and videos that I watched and read, so you can maybe dig into it even more if you want. The easy answer is supply and demand. What happened with supply and demand? Well, the easy answer is coronavirus. You can blame anything, any problem on the Rona. And in here, it's actually true. You think about it, if you're running a log, like a milling operation or a log company, especially if you're in Canada where we get a lot of our pine and a lot of our construction grade lumber, if the government told you, you can't, this isn't like don't read into that. If a restriction said you can't do your thing for 6 weeks or 8 weeks, or even after that, if your factory or your manufacturing plant has to work at a reduced capacity, just by nature, you're not going to be able to produce the levels of things that you produce prior to Rona. And so going into this, as I understand it, we have a drop in the production of lumber. Okay, you add to that the fact that people who are like on Pinterest or watching HGTV or, and we are in a DIY generation, a lot of us were told you can't go to work, you need to stay home, you're still gonna get paid, and guess what? For the first time, you're not gonna be able to get on an airplane and go travel. And you can't go to a restaurant and a bar to kill time. And so you've got people holed up in their homes, and suddenly, they're looking at, I'd like to do that project. And I saw people who have never done any DIY stuff suddenly shiplapping their wall in their office, which is, by the way, a few years too late. But that's crazy. I went to Home Depot, I think in May, to go get some screws. And there was a line outside the door. And I had to wait. Like what should have taken 5 minutes took me an hour to get in the store, get through the aisle, get my stuff, and leave. That was like almost a year ago. There were so many people at this one Home Depot just trying to buy stuff to do something to keep them busy. And so you've had not only a drop in supply, but you've had this demand from the DIY market. You've also had, I didn't think of this, but it makes sense. The restaurant industry, scrambling to pivot and build outdoor dining options in the summer. So probably covered pergolas or decks or they're trying to reinvest money so that they can open their business. And so you've had not just DIYers accessing lumber, but you have restaurants across the country accessing just general building supplies. And have you looked at the cost of plexiglass also? I had to buy a sheet of plexiglass. It was double what it should have been. So you've got that. Then you have, this is the crazy thing, on our coasts, we have had in 2020 a crazy season of natural disasters. On the East Coast, the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season closed with a record-breaking 30 named storms, with 12 of those storms hitting land on the United States. These hurricanes in 2020 caused $47 billion in damage. So to add into the pool of DIYers and restaurants, you now have $47 billion worth of things that need to be reconstructed on the East Coast. Then you have on the West Coast, you have not a water problem, you have a fire problem, and you have the wild forest fires. On the West Coast, 4.2 million acres were burned and destroyed. And there's an estimated damage of about 130 billion to 150 billion on the West Coast due to fire. So on the East Coast, you have 47 billion in damage from hurricanes. On the West Coast, you have 130 billion to 150 billion in damage. Let's round up a little bit because it makes it more dramatic. Just on the coast alone from hurricane and fire, you have close to $200 billion in damage of various things that need to be rebuilt. Okay, and then that's not even to mention the obvious, the housing crisis with a couple of things happening in housing. You have interest rates hitting an all-time low. You have people fleeing states like New York and California to go somewhere else to live because they can move somewhere where there's not as many people, or there's maybe lesser restrictions, or you can get more house for your money. I know in Texas, Californians are coming here like crazy. And so you've got a massive need for housing. I was talking to a realtor a couple of nights ago who's been selling real estate for like close to 30 or 40 years. And she told me that in a good real estate market, there's like 6 months worth of supply on the market. She said today there's 2 weeks worth of supply. She listed a house last week and like 9 a.m. By the end of the day, she had 13 offers. All of them were over asking price. And the one that the seller accepted was a $500,000 cash offer, like $20,000 over asking, no appraisal, no inspection, close in 2 weeks. They only saw the house that one time that morning. And that's the way it is right now. To add to that, you got people say, well, I need to buy a house. If I can't buy a house, I'll build a house. And so you have, again, a bunch of people trying to build homes because interest rates are low and they're maybe incentivized to move around, or maybe they realize maybe the new normal is going to be more hybrid and we're going to be spending more times in our homes. And so you're going to spring for that new custom home. You have all of these various things happening, which has created this supply and demand issue with our lumber. Hey, if you're getting value out of this video, do me a favor and hit the like button. That tells the YouTube algorithm that what I'm putting out is actually meeting your need or scratching an itch that you have, and that is the best way that you can help small channels like me grow. What I've learned in all this is that what was like a hobby for me, or what was like a place to go escape the pressures of the world, which is kind of how I got into woodworking, is now the pressures of the world have entered my hobby, have entered where I go do therapy with my hands. And so it's just an interesting deal. When will normal prices for lumber return? I don't think anybody knows. I've heard so many people speculate on this. I've seen some people go, oh, by this summer. I've heard some people say by the end of 2021. I've heard some people say January 2022. I've heard some people say the end of 2022. I've heard some people say they'll never go back to pre-pandemic levels, which I would not be surprised if they didn't go back to pre-pandemic levels. Who knows? Who knows? What will happen to woodworking? This is a really fascinating question to me, because just as I didn't anticipate a year ago coronavirus causing a ripple effect in the price of lumber, I wonder in a year from now, what will we have learned as woodworkers and makers because of the price of lumber? For example, my friend Micah got a different type of building material because he didn't want to pay the crazy amount for a 2x6, and he ended up with a better product that was straighter and easier to work with, and it was half the price. Here's what has me thinking about this. Yesterday I was on YouTube and a suggested video came up, and it was on breaking down a pallet effectively. And my first thought was like, why is YouTube showing me a pallet video from 9 years ago when everybody, including this guy, was in that make stuff out of pallets craze? And I looked at when the video was published, and it was only a few days old, and it had thousands of views. And then today it hit me, oh, this creator's smart. I think it was a glimpse inside.
With the cost of lumber being where it is, it might be a good time to start breaking down pallets.
This creator's smart. They know that people are going to start to turn to how to build things from non-traditional means. Like reclaimed lumber, I would guess, is probably going to skyrocket as well. And you're probably going to see a return to people looking for pallets and trying to reclaim free wood, and instead of using money, using their time and their like crowbars to harvest wood. I wonder what kind of smart solution will come as a result of just people refusing to go and pay, $7 or $8 or $10 for a 2x4. What about you? I'm curious what you think. Number one, a comment below. Has the lumber prices affected you at all, or have you just kind of plowed along? I'm really curious to know, has any of this affected you in real time, or is it just headlines that is scaring everybody? The second question I have for you is, when do you think that lumber prices will return? And where do you think they'll return? Is it in a few months? Is it this summer? Is it the end of the year? Is it the end of next year? Is it never? I have no idea, but I'm curious what your take is on the lumber prices, little thing that we're in right now. I'll be honest, I haven't made a whole lot of stuff because of this. I think last November I bought a few sheets of plywood and that's it. All the projects I've been doing are using the scraps and the stock that I have laying around, but there's things that I want to build and there's things I want to do, but I just refuse to pay like thousands of dollars more for what I was already saving up for. And so I'm curious if you're in the same boat as me where you're just maybe a little bit more conservative with your money. You're like, you know what, I'm just gonna wait this out and I'm not gonna take the plunge and spend $8 on a 2x4. Hey, thanks for watching and sticking around to the end. I've got a ton of other woodworking videos on here. I encourage you, if you're new to the channel, to subscribe and look around at some of the other things that I've done. If you've got any feedback, I'd love to hear from you. Actually, no, keep it to yourselves. We don't want trolls on this channel. Look at this kind of crappy plywood, $65. Look. This 1/2-inch stuff, subfloor, $66. OSB, 55 bucks. I used to buy this plywood for $24. Mom and Dad, you were wrong. Money does grow on trees. I got so many crazy looks in there. People were like, what's this dude doing with a vlog setup at Home Depot? Shouldn't he be buying overpriced lumber for 3 times the price?